In the diverse continent of Europe, there is a country with towering castles and colorful culture. The Czech Republic is not just one of Europe's numerous countries, but one of its finest. Known as the hub and home of most of the world's inventions and famous people, Czech is also home to unusual and bizarre historical facts. Come with us to explore Europe's godless country where everything is allowed, even provocative women. Number 15. One of the least religious countries in the world. Religion does not really matter to the Czechs. In fact, statistics have shown that more than half of their native population are either atheists or they simply do not have a religion. With several European countries affiliated with one religion or the other, Czechs being neutral may be confusing. But like most situations, there is a reason for that. Historically known as Bohemia, the Czech Republic was a pagan country till the 9th century. In 863 AD, two brothers, Constantine and Methodius, arrived as Christian missionaries. Their presence in the Czech Republic introduced Christianity, which spread quickly throughout the region. They were incorporated into the Catholic faith, and shortly after, more than half of the citizens became Catholics. In the late 14th century, most Czechs converted to another religion called Hussites. After the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, more Czechs converted from Catholicism to other religions. For 40 years, Czechs were subjected to communist rule. During this time, religious activities were outlawed and public church services were prohibited. The restoration of liberal democracy in 1989 reintroduced the freedom of religion. Sadly, the restrictions they had faced caused a slow recovery of religion. In the census conducted in 2021, about 47% of the Czechs admitted to being atheists, while 13% were undecided. This makes them one of the least religious countries in Europe and the world. Number 14. Czechs have exceptional traditions. Every country in the world has a list of traditions and customs that may sound unusual or weird if you do not know the history behind it. The Czech Republic is one of those countries that have retained some of their special customs and traditions. Some of these traditions, like the Festival of Burning Witches, have histories dating back to the Middle Ages. While witches were burned for practicing black magic in ancient times, this festival is maintained today, but without the actual burning. Celebrated on the last day of April, this festival is a lot more festive presently. Instead of witches, straw dolls are burned and people dance around the fire. Another notable festival and tradition is the Barborky Festival, which is celebrated on the 4th of December. In this festival, a branch of a cherry tree must be cut and put in a vase in the house of a single woman. The tree from which the branch is cut must not be younger than 10 years old. If the branch blooms before Christmas Eve, then it means the single woman will get married the next year. For a country that loves music, they also imbibe some fertility rites in their celebrations. For example, a woman can be spanked on her buttocks with a whip while dancing. Similarly, men can have cold water thrown on them in public. Although Czechs are not bothered with religion, Christmas and Easter are still part of the festivities they celebrate in the country. Number 13. There are more castles than you can count. If you are a lover of medieval charm and architecture, the Czech would be the best place to visit. The Czech Republic has the highest number of castles in the world. Think about it this way. If you visited 3 castles every day for a year, you would still not see all of the castles. Presently, there are about 2,000 castles in the country, and most of them are famous for one thing or another. Starting with Prague Castle, the oldest and largest castle in the world, this monument is a historical marvel. The Prague Castle is 570 meters long and 128 meters wide. That is more than the size of 7 soccer fields. Although it is the home of the President of the Czech Republic, it used to be the home of past Czech rulers. There are other smaller but equally famous castles scattered all over the country. Some of them include the Český Krumlov Castle located in southern Bohemia and the Karlstein in Prague. There is also the Krivoklat Castle and the Kost Castle, each of them a solid representation of Czech's rich history. Each of these castles presents a stunning view of the country for its viewers. Every year, each of these castles is visited by tourists who want a glimpse of their beauty. Number 12. One of the world's safest haven. Every year, countries are ranked for their safety and level of peace. For several years, the Czech Republic has repeatedly made the list of the world's safest countries. For this year, The Czech Republic once again stood out among other countries locally and internationally. In Europe, the Czech Republic is ranked the 6th safest country. In the world, it is ranked number 10 on the list of safe countries. The criteria for this ranking include political, economic, and social factors that all contribute to a country's stability. Some of the major points that contributed to its ranking were low crime rates and low terrorism impacts. Also, it is not so easy to access weapons as a citizen, and this also added to its points. Most importantly, the safe communities that Czech provides are an added bonus. The efficient healthcare system and insurance system tidy up the whole thing. With clean hospitals, streets, and an affordable insurance scheme, Czech Republic is everyone's dream. This does not only make Czech safe for nationals, but also tourists and immigrants. The word robots was first used by Karel Čapek over 100 years ago in 1921. Karel used the word when he was writing his play. While writing, the Czech author needed a word that would describe his character's futuristic helper. He first used the word labors, from the English word labor, but even with this word, Karel was still not satisfied. Eventually, his brother Josef Čapek, who was a painter and also a writer, suggested the word robot, a word of Slavic origin. The word itself is coined from the Czech word robota, which means forced labor. With the word fitting perfectly with the theme of Karel's play, he used it to describe a fictional humanoid and mechanical slave. When the play was launched, the word became popular and spread from Czech to the whole world. Compared to its use today, the word robot meant something else to Karel when he first used it. Although Joseph coined the word, Karel used it for the first time and made it famous. Presently, the word robot has come to mean more than when it was first used. Now it is used for any machine that can be operated by man or by itself. Meanwhile, when it was first used by Karel, it meant artificial people or slaves who were happy to work for their owners. Large clocks in countries with historical significance often add to the country's allure, but astronomical clocks add an extra layer of flair to their home country's charm. The Prague Horloge is a medieval astronomical clock located in the Old Town Hall in Prague, the capital city of the Czech Republic. Installed in 1410, it is the third oldest astronomical clock in the world, and the only one still working to date. The unusual and fascinating thing about the clock is that it is not just a clock. Besides telling the time daily, this clock also shows other astronomical positions, including the position of the sun and the moon. As a very complex clock, it has several features that may require a bit of astronomical knowledge to understand. If you are a fan of the zodiac, you can have a fun time viewing the clock, as it also shows icons of each of the zodiac signs. Designed by clockmaker Mikulus of Kadaň and astronomy professor John Sindel, all of the icons are fully functional and are not just for decoration. Although the oldest parts of the clock were made in 1410, the calendar dial was added around 1490. Since its creation, the horloge has stopped working several times and has been repaired by experts. In the 1600s, wooden statues were added to the clock. After breaking down sometime in the early 1700s, a major repair took place from 1787 to 1791. After this round of repair, figures of the apostles were added to the clock. During the Prague Uprising in 1945, the clock suffered huge damage. It was repaired and started working again in 1948. During a reconstruction of the Old Town Tower that was destroyed during the uprising, the clock was renovated. Presently, the clock still stands at 614 years old, with its anniversary celebrated periodically by Czechs. Number 9. The second largest ossuary. If you think you have seen everything creepy in life, think again. The Czech Republic is home to several medieval structures and buildings. It is also home to the remains of humans that have lived long before us. Among the monuments and historic buildings visited by tourists every year is the Sedlec Ossuary. Also known as the Church of All Saints, the Sedlec Ossuary is often called the Church of Bones. This is because it contains the bones of about 40 to 70,000 people. Second only to the Catacomb of Paris, these bones have been arranged to form decorations for the church. As a fully functional church, This means you can be seated next to the bones of a person who lived years ago. Creepy or cool? But the question is, how did a church become home to a mass site of human remains? Well, before the location became a chapel, it was first a cemetery. After the abbot of the Cistercian monastery was sent to Jerusalem in 1278 by the King of Bohemia, the whole story changed. When the abbot, Henry, returned, he sprinkled holy soil that he got from Golgotha on the cemetery. This singular act prompted a lot of people to request to be buried there. Over time, the cemetery was expanded to accommodate more bodies. In the 1400s, a Gothic church that would now be known as the chapel was built on top of the cemetery. In the 16th century, a half-blind monk was tasked with exhuming the skeletons and stacking them in the chapel. This led to the unusual masterpiece that exists in the chapel today. Number 8. Architectural wonder. During the Second World War, several European countries suffered huge losses to structures and buildings. Fortunately, Prague, the capital city of Czech, is the only city that escaped major destruction to its buildings. Because the city was not destroyed, most of the architectural structures built during the medieval times are still standing. With the addition of modern architecture, Czech has become a hub for architectural masterpieces. The historical buildings include the Prague Castle, the Palace of the Archbishop of Hradčany, and the Church of St. John. Structures from different eras stand on display for all to see. If you visit the country, you will see buildings from the Baroque era, the Gothic era, and even from the Renaissance era. Presently, the Dancing House adds a modern touch to the rich architecture. Designed in 1992 and completed in 1996, the Dancing House looks like something out of a book. Although the design clashed with the existing architecture at the time, it has grown to be loved by natives and tourists alike. Yearly, the Dancing House is among the list of the most visited tourist attraction in Czech. Number 7. Obsession with mushrooms. Czechs are obsessed with mushrooms, plain and simple. Although they may pass it off as just being passionate about the fungi, it is clear their relationship with mushrooms is more than just passionate. The only thing they love besides mushrooms is picking them. In the Czech Republic, natives have a history of going mushroom hunting or picking. This is a tradition that goes back years and is even referenced as a national sport. In historical times, poor families who could not afford meat ate mushrooms instead. The act of picking or hunting these mushrooms was also a way for families to bond together. With mushrooms becoming a popular food source for the rich and poor, mushroom hunting nowadays is more fun. But like all natural plant life, mushrooms have their seasons. The best time for mushroom hunting in the Czech Republic is from August to October. The climate at this time is perfect for the growth and bloom of mushrooms. Mushroom picking is also the time some families share certain information and pass down certain knowledge to their children. Among this information are the best places to find healthy mushrooms. Information like the best time to pick mushrooms and tips for a successful mushroom hunt can only be passed down during an active hunt. So the next time you visit during the hunting period, be sure to tag along. You might learn a thing or two. Number 6. The home country of famous intellects. The Czech Republic boasts of several things besides architecture and low crime rates. Some of the things we use today were invented by Czech nationals. From Nobel Prize winners to scientists and creatives, the Czech Republic stands among the most innovative countries in the world. Gregor Mendel, the father of modern genetics and the laws of hereditary, was born in Heinzendorf. The soft contact lenses that we use today was invented in 1959 by a Czech chemist known as Otto Wichterle. Let's not forget the inventor and first user of the word robot, Josef and Karel Čapek. With almost 90% of the country's population being educated, it is not surprising at all. Besides having several historical figures originating from the country, Czech is also home to several inventions. The refined sugar that we know and use today was invented and patented in Czech Moravia by Jakub Krištof Rod. Other prominent inventions from the Czech include the modern compass, photo prints, and the first grounded lightning rod. It makes you wonder if it's the food or the water that makes Czechs so intelligent and creative. Subscriber's pick. Visiting the Czech Republic is like taking a trip down the pages of a history book. But like the historical times, unusual happenings and actions were sometimes the order of the day. The picture here shows a scantily clad woman reaching out to a much older gentleman. But what does this suggest? To you, the viewer, it can be hard to tell exactly what it means. However, the mannerisms and expression on the man's face suggest it is not unusual. These and more are regular occurrences on the streets of the Czech Republic, a country in Europe where anything goes. For a country which does not pay much attention to religion, the energy is unmistakable as moral boundaries are pushed to the limits. Who draws the line between sanity and unapologetic freedom, and where does it end? Take a moment and explore Europe's godless country where everything is allowed, including provocative women. Number 5. The beer capital of the world. Since the launch of light lager beer in 1842, Czech has remained unchallenged as the beer capital of the world. The city of Pilsen in Czech is so popular for its light lager beer that hundreds of tourists troop in yearly to get a sample of its taste. Along with the beer, the Pilsen Urquell brewery is just as famous as its product. But you might be surprised to know that Pilsen had not always been such good producers of beer. In fact, Pilsen was once known for having the worst beer in the Czech Republic. So how did they turn their fate around? The Pilsen city was founded in 1295 by King Wenceslas II. After its creation, the city had permission to brew their own beer and sell it in their homes. Beers were so popular and common that almost every house brewed or sold them. But while beer was common, their production method made the beers horrible. The brewers fermented the surface of the beer with yeast, and this caused the barrel to have varying flavors. The worst part was that this method made the liquid prone to easy spoilage. At a point in 1838, the beer was so bad that the brewers emptied their barrels on the streets. Martin Stelzer, a local architect, was then sent out to scout the breweries of Munich and come back with plans on building the perfect brewery. His journey was a success, and thus, the history of Pilsen beer changed forever. Now Pilsen's beer has an annual per capita consumption of 181 liters. Number 4. The Wall of Lenin. John Lennon, the former member of the all-time famous music band, the Beatles, may be dead, but his memory is very much alive in Czech. Like the rest of the world, the Czech Republic adored the Beatles band and their songs. After John Lennon was murdered in 1980, Czechs expressed their grief in the most touching way. This wall started out with just a portrait of the late singer, but now it has become a memorial place for the star. Located in the Malá Strana region of Prague, the wall shows portraits of John Lennon, graffiti inspired by him, and even lyrics to some of the Beatles songs. Since the death of John, the wall has been repainted multiple times. However, hours after a fresh paint, it is covered again with letters, notes, pictures, and graffiti. In November 2019, Czech designer Pavel Stasny painted the wall with John Lennon's portrait in view of several professional artists. The wall was then dedicated to the public with strict rules not to paint over the late singer's portrait. Nowadays, the wall is monitored by security personnel who watch over the wall and make sure no one paints over the art. People are still allowed to drop their messages on other parts of the wall. However, they are only allowed to do so using degradable materials like pencils and chalk. So the next time you visit, drop a note in honor of one of the most famous singers in history. Number 3. Museum of Hygiene. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the phrase Museum of Hygiene? Well, prepare to be shocked. The Museum of Hygiene is a historical collection of chamber pots from different times in history. While this may sound weird, there is actually a reason for that. The purpose of the museum is to study the historical development of personal hygiene items from our history. Think of it as a not-so-private collection of toilets. Among the collection are chamber pots from historical figures like Napoleon Bonaparte and Countess Matilda Nostitz. There is also an earthen chamber pot from medieval times in the Netherlands, as well as one from Titanic. Fortunately, chamber pots are not the only things you will find here. You can also find ancient toilet paper, flushers, and some paintings. It would seem children were not left out of the fun, as potties that play a tune can also be found there. It's easy to see how historians had it going before the invention of the modern toilet. Number 2. Deepest underwater cave. In the town of Hranice, Czech, The deepest underwater cave was discovered by a team of Czech explorers. In 1999, the cave was first explored by Polish diver Krzysztof Starnowski. By studying the formation of the limestone, he deduced that the cave might go deeper than originally thought. After his first exploration, Krzysztof went on more dives in the cave, each time coming up with more clues. In 2014, he thought he had reached the bottom when he reached a depth of 200 meters. Instead, he found another tunnel that went further. He explored 265 meters and another depth of 370 meters. Krzysztof finally led a team that reached a depth of 519 meters. Out of this depth, about 450 meters is underwater, with the rest above the surface. As a perfect spot for deep water divers, the Hranis Cave adds another feather to the Czech Republic. Number 1. Nude Beaches. The Czech Republic is home to liberal individuals and free-spirited beings. Citizens and tourists are not restricted or bound by moral codes when in Czech. For this reason, it is not unusual to witness nudism in any form. The existence of nude beaches makes it even easier for people to be free from the bondage of their clothing. The Czech Republic has several relaxation sites, and some of them include nude beaches. Yes, you thought right. It's a public beach where you are not required to wear any clothes. The Hostovar Reservoir is a perfect example of Czech's numerous nude beaches. The nude beach section of Hostovar is separated from the regular beach section. Here at this beach, you get to relax in your natural state without being judged or criticized. Plus, the presence of 2 kiosks means you have food available too. If you are a lover of the outdoors, then a nude beach might just be the best place to relax privately. Lounging under the sun with a view of a beautiful beach, what could be better? Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.